In recent years, many celebrities have come into Christianity, and the interesting thing is, those inside the club are casting certain judgments on those who are wanting to join. And one of these people is Kat Von D. Now, Kat Von D was a very talented tattoo artist and a successful musician before she became a Christian. And the problem that many people are having with her is the fact that she looks like a tattoo artist and a musician. So what is it that they want from Kat? And what can that reveal to us about what we desire for those who are coming into our club? So our thesis for this episode is it's hard for us to think about the ways in which we can actually be students of Jesus or have a curriculum for Christ-likeness, mainly because we mistake the means for how we do that for the ends themselves. And so he talks about 4 ways in which this goes wrong for people, the ways that this gets misoriented. And we're going to talk about 2 of those to start here. So, Dan, you want to talk about those 2 ways that this gets misaligned for a lot of us?
Yeah, and so Willard's concept that we mistake the means of transformation for the ends of transformation. The first 2 that he brings up, and I'll just read the quote on page 351. He says, 2 objectives in particular that are often taken as primary goals must not be left in that position. They can be reintroduced later in proper subordination to true ones. And so I want to pause on that point real quick, just to say that it's not that the things he's talking about are not good things. All of the things he's talking about are good things. The problem that we have is when these good things are taken to be the main thing. In fact, all of these things are necessary things. But when you make them the main objective, they go astray. And so the first 2 that he brings up, and he thinks these are the 2 most popular, at least within his tradition, and I think within Christianity more broadly speaking, at least in the US, this is the case. He says these are external conformity to the words of Jesus' teachings about actions in specific contexts, and the profession of perfect, correct doctrine. And so these 2 things are they work in tandem, I think, within broader Christian culture. One of the things that I find to be super interesting is this first one, external conformity to the words of Jesus. There's a whole movement against that. Don't talk about works righteousness. You're saved by grace, not by works. And so we push that a lot. And I think that the focus on trying to persuade people against works righteousness actually creates a kind of culture in which works do sort of become a focus, ironically. And then, of course, there's the profession of perfect doctrine. Now, I think the profession of perfect doctrine actually tends to be the obsession within most contexts that talk about and rant about works righteousness and the temptation towards works righteousness.
Right, because the major point for them, obviously, and them de-emphasizing the works is not the works, but is the doctrine, is the way in which you talk or express or believe, quote unquote, the things that they say, right? This is many, and I had this phase, short phase for me. I had this phase when I was in high school, but this comes out in like this is young, restless, and reformed. This is many young guys, and I say young guys because it usually actually just is young guys, transformation into becoming a Calvinist.
Yeah.
It is that obsession. I think this understandable reaction to like, well, I need some borders around what I think or how I conceptualize God or what it means to believe in the Bible. Yeah. And it gives you a systematic, logical way to delineate that,
Mhm.
but then you fall into this trap. What Willard's saying here, you fall into this trap of, well, how do I perfectly profess the correct doctrine of tulip Calvinism?
Yeah.
And yeah, as Luther said, reason's a whore, she'll work for anybody. So
Yeah. Yeah. Luther has some wild quotes.
he is wild.
Um,
But I mean, anyway, I have a lot of thoughts on Luther. We won't get into them now.
yeah,
But
fair. Same. But what I want to trace out here is that these two things that Willard brings to the fore up front are two sides of the same coin. Right? You need proof of faithfulness in some way,
mhm,
right? That's understood. Even people who want to resist that, it's understood. It manifests itself in the church culture. And so you either need profession of perfect doctrine or you need external conformity of the words of Jesus. Now we're going to get to an example of external conformity in a second, but I do want to harp on this perfect doctrine bit. Just one more, just for one more beat. The idea that so when I was writing in seminary my Trinitarian paper, you usually have to write a paper on doctrine of the Trinity at some point. And when I was writing that paper, I accidentally, in my first draft of it that I submitted to my professor, because you have to submit 2 drafts. In the first draft, I said that the second being of the Trinity by accident. And that's not the right term to use there. And it's an important distinction to make because it's 3 persons in one being. And so if you say the second being of the Trinity, then you're off the get-go starting with the wrong metaphysical assumption.
right.
Right. And that does have consequences. Go back to Willard chapter 1, the consequence of mere ideas. Ideas do have consequences. And so it is important to get the doctrine right. But that's not the goal. That's the means by which you achieve the goal of the transformed life of the Christian. Anything else to add on these 2 points before I transition to our next bit?
The only thing I would say is you're right. I think you're totally right to point that out. And we would be the first to affirm that. It's good that you say these are 2 sides of the same coin, because the problem Willard is pointing out is usually that these two, for many people, seem exclusive, and they usually aren't in reality.
Yeah.
But yeah.
So I'm going to read another Willard quote on the external conformity piece, and then I'm going to play a clip from an interview that Luke and I have been meditating on recently. So Willard says, the emphasis all too often is on some point of behavior modification. I can already see a bunch of red flags. That's just Pharisaic law-abiding legalism, da-da-da-da-da-da. We're going to demonstrate an example of ways in which very in that line of thought Christian communities demonstrate behavior modification. Willard continues, this is helpful, but it is not adequate to human life. So behavior modification is helpful, but it's not adequate. It does not reach the root of the human problem, the root of the character of the inner life, where Jesus and his call to apprenticeship in the kingdom place the emphasis. So the emphasis is not on behavior modification. It's not on profession of perfect doctrine. It's upon something deeper. But both of these things help us achieve that deeper transformation, but they're not the key to it. So now, in case you think behavior modification, external conformity piece is just us picking at Christian groups that are not, don't have their perfect doctrine correct, we're gonna play a clip. And this is an interview with on Allie Beth Stuckey's Relatable podcast, where she's talking with Kat Von D, who recently converted to Christianity and within the last few years, so not too terribly recently, and has gotten some backlash surrounding her conversion. So she's going to talk a little bit about the backlash from Christians surrounding her conversion.
Yeah, and sorry, I just got to give one more prelude here. If you don't remember who Kat Von D is, it's 'cause some people, she's like C tier celebrity.
Fair.
I'm just trying to be realistic here.
Yeah.
Like, she had her own show, I think it was LA Inc., where she was like head of this tattoo shop. She's a very, very talented, very accomplished tattoo artist. That's how I knew of her. Because I was but I was that like 16-year-old kid who like watched a bunch of shows about tattoos and wanted to get double sleeves, and glad I didn't at the time, but I probably still will. Anyway, that's how I knew about her. Obviously she looks the part, and she is a musician and all this stuff. And so just know that like that's the world Kat is coming from when she becomes a Christian.
Yeah. And I want to point out one thing you just said. She looks the part. And the tension here is that she still looks the part.
Right. What do you think? She's going to get all her tattoos removed?
Yeah. So,
you know, when you do that, you don't realize how much harm you're doing. You know, like I would look at a lot of the comments that I got, and they were really cruel and very, very annoyingly holier than thou. And I would look at some of them and say, okay, let's look at like what is to be gained from this comment. Like, who does it help? Like, to be a know-it-all? Like, who does it help? Does it help me? Does it help all my other followers following and like witnessing the judgment and the criticism and definitely of not knowing the other person? You know, like everyone's like, oh, well, she's a baby Christian, so you know you should cut her some slack. It's like, I'm not a baby Christian. I mean, I just recently got baptized, but like, I'm not like, this didn't happen yesterday. Like, I have an understanding of a lot of the things that people are talking about. Like, I'm not going to dress like how you think I'm going to dress. Like, nothing's changing in that department. Like, even like with like the you know, the music that I make or some of the content that I make, it's like, it's not for you, you know, it's not for you. You have no idea how many DMs that I got from like other goth kids that are in the same boat as I was. They're going, man, I'm at this crossroad and I want to go back to church, but like, I don't have a church to go to, or I feel like even within my own family unit, people have like, I'm an outcast and I'm trying to make my way back to Jesus, but like these people, you know, like, thank you for doing that, you know? And it's like, so I don't have any intention on like conforming to what somebody's like uniform or what their idea of darkness is, you know, because I don't think I'm a dark person. I wear dark clothes, but like people's like definition of darkness is a lot different, you know? Like what's dark to you might not be to me. Like, I'm not scared of death. Like, I talk about it all the time. My entire career was based on that. You know, I tattooed portraits of dead people on their loved ones for decades. And like, so I've read every grieving book. I've read every bereavement book. I've read like, you know, I think death is something that like we should be able to talk about. And, you know, when I see a skull, I don't think like, oh, that's demonic. it's just not for me. But if it triggers you spiritually, then keep scrolling, you know, like, or don't listen to my music or whatever it is. But I think that like the amount of like critical Christians on my Instagram now have become such a turnoff to people who are actually seeking God that like I had to just block and delete. Like, even if it's good stuff, I just like, if people talk about, this is not for you, you know? And it's like, you end up pushing people away. And like, the one person that I think about through all this is my husband, you know, because when we got together, we were both not Christian, you know, we got married, and then he's really helped me without knowing find my way. And he's not necessarily on the same page. I mean, in some ways he is, you know, he's very supportive. We go to church together, you know, every Sunday. He always supports me. We pray together. But there's parts of him that's still questioning. And like, after that, getting so much grief from people that spilled over into my husband, he was like, I remember the next morning, he was like, babe, I don't want to be a part of that. Yeah. You know, and it like, I'm trying not to get emotional because it's like I've been working for years, like trying to like lead by example and share what I, the step my own stepping stones with him to like hopefully one day he can come to me and say, hey, guess what, like I've given my heart to Jesus. That hasn't happened yet. But when you have like an entire community of people like attacking you, like, man, like you're, not to say that my husband is like, going to do something based on a comment on Instagram, but when it's getting amplified so much, like
Yeah.
it turns people off, you
Yeah.
know? And
And-
not everyone's like that,
So these Christians criticizing Kat Von D are actively being an anti-witness to her husband because she has not accepted the external conformity and behavior modification of looking the part.
Mhm.
She doesn't look the part. And so she gets hate online because she looks darker. She's actually reaching an audience that the Christians criticizing her aren't reaching. But just because she doesn't look the way they think she should, they criticize her, and her husband is resistant even more so to being brought into the fold of Christianity.
Yeah, my question is, I don't know, what do they think she should look like?
Let me show you. So, holy vestments of the church. Let's talk about that for just a second. Christians throughout history have worn, specifically if they're in a pastoral or priestly role, have worn something that sets them apart from the congregation.
Mhm.
And now, within the Protestant church in America, particularly the non-denominational strains, there's a very particular kind of holy vestment that they wear.
Hang on. Well, hang on. Let me. I want to make one comment on this
Yeah.
because, okay, I want to talk for just a minute on why. Why is the priest wearing different vestments than the normal congregant? Especially if you go to Catholic Church, Anglican Church, Orthodox Church, you're going to be struck by that. You're going to be like, why is this man wearing a dress? Like, why does he have robes on? What's up with all the colors? Like, all this stuff. Why and then everyone else is usually wearing like pants and a shirt and like they're wearing normal clothes. The reason for that is because the priest wears those clothes, and I'll use the word priest because everyone who wears these vestments would call themselves that in any of these traditions. The priest wears those clothes because it is a sign of his role and function. He is serving the congregation and being a priest and serving the liturgy and serving the Eucharist and being their spiritual counselor and doing all these things for the congregation. That's why he sets himself apart, because his role is different than theirs. And is an outward sign of an inward reality. So just take, for instance, whenever I'll talk about my tradition, whenever my priest is doing priestly things, he's wearing his cassock. He's wearing the black shirt with the vest with the like long robe. Even if I meet him in public somewhere that's not the church, like say we've done this a couple times, meet for coffee. He wears his cassock and his crucifix not because he wants to show off, but because he is my priest and he's being my priest in meeting with me. That is the purpose of our conversation, of all of this. So that is for him. He's not going to sleep in it and doesn't wear it at home with his family. Like, But when he's doing those things, he's wearing that. And my point is, what's happened with what we're about to display and what these Christians with Cat are mad at, what's happened with the pastor and the preachers with sneakers era is that the pastor has now, like, the role of the pastor has become different. And part of what the consequence of that has become is the fact that he now wants to not differentiate himself at all, but look like everyone else. So all the cool kids are wearing J's, I'm gonna wear Jordans on stage. Oh, our church dress is down because we're low church and we meet in a coffee shop, and I'm gonna wear like a jean jacket and my Blundstones. Like, you know what I mean? And this isn't like the heart behind it isn't necessarily a bad thing.
No.
It's understandable. But in this realm, we lose. Again, when we can have discussions about the priesthood, pastoral roles later.
Yeah.
It's not the point right now. But I just want to tease this out because that's why this is happening.
Yes. So let me interject. So what has happened, and you just pointed to this, is the low church traditions have typically they haven't gotten rid of holy vestments.
No, they've
swapped the holy vestments of the historic church for the holy vestments of pop culture.
Right.
And I'll show just a quick example. Stephen Furtick, right? He's wearing the pop culture standard, at least in some circles. But those are the circles that he's trying to reach. And it's all about being approachable.
Right.
Which
not about being different.
Is a good goal. Again, this whole episode's about good goals that don't work out properly. The problem with that is this, I think, demonstrates, and I'll make stronger case for this argument in a different video at a later date. This demonstrates, I think, the way that our culture is actually changing the church, not our church changing the culture.
Right.
And so what I want to say is, like, this is what they want Kat Von D to look like when they issue that complaint. They're still aiming for behavior modification. But this isn't what it means to be a Christian. And that's the crucial point.
Mm-hmm.
That's the crucial point.
It's not that they need her to show up in a long skirt with a headscarf.
Mm-hmm.
They want her to, like, get rid of her tattoos or whatever.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's weird. It's weird. I don't get it. But yeah, so that's external conformity. In a very, let's say, superficial sense.
Yes.
We're not heading necessarily to the words of Jesus about actions in specific context, although specific context here being church service, church circles, what's the expected appropriate dress is a way to kind of hit at this idea where not only do we call for that and, like, wow, you got really angry at that person, that was not conformity to the words of Jesus, where it's like, oh, you aren't wearing the right thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I want to, just for sake of continuity, I want to skip down to the profession of perfect doctrine paragraph we have.
Yeah, let's do it.
So I'm going to summarize that real quick and then play a clip related to that. Willard, also in the chapter, he talks about how very little of our actions lie within the, like, conscious realm of our thought. Like, our actions tend to actually come very automatically based on habits and routines that we've built.
Mm-hmm.
And so the conscious mind's power over these is very limited, and we tend to, like, exaggerate that. And
this is why many times you will find yourself doing something or about to do something and be like, I don't know if I really want to do that. But then you sometimes, maybe more often than not, you go ahead and do it because it's habitual.
Yes. You have that larger helping, you go back for seconds, or something as simple as you drove home from work and you weren't paying attention to driving at all. It's because
You're
you've
like, how'd
done
I
it
get
a
home?
hundred
I don't
times. Yeah,
remember.
like you know how to get home, and your body just does it. And so this idea that the profession of perfect doctrine, the ideas that the mental is going to change us in a profound way, misses the mark, because it doesn't actually deal with the habits that we form, the incarnated reality of our existence. It just deals with, and again, I've said doctrines are important because they do determine what habits we try and form, but or instill in us, but they don't in and of themselves make the habits happen.
Right. I could know all the reasons, even just purely scientific, physiological reasons, I probably shouldn't watch porn. But if I haven't changed that habit, those deeper things that push me towards it, it's not going to change. Even if I know all the right info, right?
Yep.
Even if I know, we do this all the time. I know that food isn't good for me. I know I probably shouldn't eat like, that whole bag of gas station donuts. But gosh darn it, man, I'm craving some of that powdered sugar. And like that craving is a deeper instinct in me than my mental mind of like, but that this is nutritionally empty and vapid and not good for, but it's like, yeah, but there's this other thing in me, whatever that means, right? There's a spirit that's possessing me that is this passion that I have that is greater than that just intellectual knowledge that drives me towards it. So if you can't get rid of or replace or change or redirect that spirit, that passion, good luck,
Yeah. So I'm going to play a clip of someone professing some doctrine, and I'm not going to claim that it's all perfect. I'm also not going to claim that it's all wrong. I'll let you as the audience decide. But I want us to think about, one, the presentation, and two, even if this doctrine is correct,
and parroted.
and yes, and you believe it, does just believing it count? And you've probably seen this clip, but I'll play it nonetheless.
Pretty famous.
We're not talking about this in the car on the way home. Some of you have already whispered in her ear. I'm sorry, I'll do better, trust me. Let's just move on real quickly. How dare you? Who in the hell do you think you are? Abusing a woman, neglecting a woman, being a coward, a fool, being like your father, Adam. Who do you think you are? You are not God. You are just a man. You're not an impressive man. You're not a responsible man. You're not a noble man. You're not a respectable man. You're not a responsible man in any regard. I don't care how successful you are. In this area, if you are a failure, it clouds all of your dignity. It robs all of your masculinity. There is no excuse for any man who claims the name of Christ to treat a woman in a dishonorable, disrespectful way.
I mean, that last part,
Yeah.
true. But a ton of people believe that. Maybe, I'll just say it, Ravi Zacharias.
Yeah.
And what happens? The problem is usually We already have the correct information, but it hasn't made its way into our bodies, into our habits, into our true beliefs, into the beliefs that actually manifest themselves into the way that we work. Mentally agreeing to something and believing it, I think, are two different things. Willard, he makes the very good point that you cannot change character or behaviors and leave belief intact. And so beliefs do have to change. But
and this is back to his point, many times it's funny because it can happen either way, but I think regardless, that underlying action, underlying motivation has to shift. And when that, I would say, this is a tough statement, when that motivation shifts, then that's when the belief truly changes. Let's put it that way.
So real quick, I know we didn't spend too much time on that. We spent more time on that in the beginning. I want to play this next clip, just to intro it a little bit. We're going to go back to Kat Von D real quick. Willard talks about two other goals that corrupt our transformation. And again, these are good things that get in the way of being transformed when they aren't just means, because they are how we become transformed, but they become the ends. And that's faithfulness to the activity of the church. And as we're going to talk about, I think, for the rest of this series in chapter 9, faithfulness to the activities of the church is a big deal when it comes to transformation. And then seeking after ecstatic experiences. So Kat Von D says something really interesting about the ecstatic experiences piece that I think is important.
Church, and when I'm singing hymns at church, like it's a whole different experience than when I listen to The Cure or whoever, Depeche Mode, whoever I'm listening to. It's like a different process, so I went to like a big church when I was in California recently, and I'd never been to a church like that before, and I loved the sermon, I loved the message, the people were so nice and great and everything, but I will say I couldn't enjoy the song part of it. Like both my husband and I looked at it, was like, it just didn't feel, it feels weird to us. Like it feels like we're watching a concert. I'm watching somebody sing a song, and because I know how to write a pop song, I'm like, all I'm thinking of is the songwriting session that it took to get to this, and like the emotional cues, and then the repetitiveness of it, the drop, and then here comes this, and it's just like, it doesn't, and everybody was singing along. I'm like, okay, so they listen to that in their cars, like that's what they listen to, and that's totally cool. It's just not for me, like I just want to listen to like the old stuff, and that, so I'm like, should I stop listening to love songs? Because that's my genre, is like I just write love songs, and a lot of them are reflection, they're sad love songs, they're like reflections of experiences I've had, or feelings I've had when my husband and I get in a fight, or whatever it is, like these are expressions of my experience. And I think, like, is it wrong, and you can help me maybe figure this out, is it wrong that that not everything is about God in a sense, or Jesus? Like, is it wrong that like some people like,
We'll end it there. Her statement that she knows how to write the pop song, and her comparison, again, talking about pop culture, wearing the flashy sweater or the Jordans or whatever, the music actually is taken on that same form.
Yeah.
And it's a chasing after an ecstatic experience. And it might not be an encounter with, you don't have a vision or something like that, but it's still a chasing after an ecstatic experience, because it's designed to create within you a certain kind of emotion. Whereas at the beginning, she said she really likes hymns because they're different and they do something to her. deeper than just that ecstatic experience. It's not about the feeling, it's about the transformation.
Right. And there's depth many times in those hymns, in the words of the hymns, that isn't present in, I would say, most of modern contemporary Christian music.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think that hits one of the reasons she probably feels like it's a different thing. It's operating at a different level, and it's tough because, you know, you talk to people, they're going to have ecstatic experiences, or they're going to have things that happen in church, and I don't think we're trying to discount those things.
No, I've had many, many good ones, transformative ones.
Daniel, maybe your comments on this in a second. One of the things I see as different in certain things that have happened to me at church, even recently or prior, or how I hear other people talk about it, is when the ecstatic experience is about you rather than about God. And I don't know how to say that any better. So
There's an ecstatic experience where you're listening to the worship music and it lulls at just the right time and it repeats the words and it's doing things emotionally to you. And then there's the ecstatic experience where you're not aware of yourself anymore,
mhm.
and you're suddenly face to face with something that's beyond you. I don't want to say God because, no man can see God's face and that. But like you, at the same time, I want to say God because like I believe that is like you're coming in contact with something that transcends, the being who transcends and made everything else.
Mhm.
And that is a transformative experience. And your emotions are important too.
Right.
Okay. So like having the warm and fuzzies isn't a bad thing. But chasing after the warm and fuzzies, I think, is a lot of what worship culture tends to lean towards in our therapeutic culture.
I don't know if I'll get the time to say this, but the one difference for me that has happened as of late is like ecstatic experiences that feel like a release versus ecstatic experiences that feel like a burden. I think for those that have had the latter, they know exactly what I mean.
Yeah.